The next thing we want to do is just over edge or zigzag over the edges again. You already know how to do that. Turn your machine onto zigzag stitch. Lining up the edge of the fabric with the edge of the window of your foot. Reversing at the beginning and end. We will show you in another video how to use an overlocker to get your edges nice and neat. Okay. When you zigzag over the edges, don't worry whether you're sewing from the top up or down. It's the main seam that holds the fabric together that matters. In reverse. And when you turn this inside out, outside in, you can see you already have something that resembles a skirt. The next step would be to attach our facing pieces to the skirt to finish the raw edge at the top so they're turned under and it looks nice and neat. And then the very last step would be hemming our skirt, and then you're nearly done. So let's just quickly iron our seam allowances to make our skirt nice and neat. We've closed them up together, but if you had left them open like we did at the back here, you could iron them apart. For now, we're going to leave our skirt with the right side out. Using a chopstick or a knitting needle, you want to go inside and scrape along the seam of your skirt to make sure that the seam sits on the outside, like this. Once you've done that, you can press your skirt very carefully. You might have to repeat this as you go. Steam it into place, and you can already see the difference here and here in how the skirt sits. Repeat on the other side. And now we're ready to attach the facing. Remember, we have 3 facing pieces, 1 for the front and 2 for the back. What you want to do is lay out your front facing piece with the good side facing up and match up the notches that you have here on the side with the notches that you've cut on the side of your front piece for other side. So you can see here how they're meant to match up. You can pin this or you can just hold it in place because it is a very short seam. So using your regular seam allowance again, for me it's 1.5 again. Making sure the edges match up really well. You're sewing along your seam with a straight stitch. So if you've still got it on zigzag, just move it over to your straight stitch. Repeat on the other side. And cut your thread. I recommend you iron your seams open just to reduce the bulk because this will sit against the skirt fabric in a moment. So take it to your ironing board so you can see how I now have a continuous U-shaped piece. If you have facing coming up here and you're ironing across it, you might find that some of the sticky side comes up. So what you perhaps want to do is use another piece of fabric. You can even use part of that waist facing itself and lay it on top. So just so you don't ruin your iron, especially if you have an expensive one with the glue coming up from the other side. So I've ironed this nice and flat. And I will do the same thing again because you can see how this would want to stick to your iron once you apply heat. And ironing this open, you can also see how this seam sits nice and flat. Okay, so this is your U shape from the right side. This is your front, and these are your two back pieces. Now that you've sewn your facing pieces together, you're ready to attach them to the skirt. In order to do so, put the right side of the facing pieces together with the right side of the skirt, very importantly matching up the side seams. So I would recommend pinning this into place. And always start with the side seams first. And you can see how here, while I'm pinning them, I make sure that my seam allowances are open. Then you can pin them onto the end. Now keep in mind that when we turn this under to the other side, that this will extend because we've already sewn this in place. So what you want to do, you want to turn under your seam allowance here before you pin it. So when we sew it, this will sit under there like this, and we can attach it without showing through on the other side. So turn this under and pin. And repeat on the other side. Again, making sure your seam allowances match up. Now remember as you're sewing that if you're sewing 1.5 centimeters down, that this is where your seams will meet. So even if your seams match up at the beginning, but you shift the fabric over to here, by the time you've gone down, they might not match up anymore. So again, you want to turn under the raw edge of your fabric, fiddling it into place, seeing how much you need to put under. Because as you're turning it, you want this to sit behind your zipper. So you want this to meet up with the overlap. Okay. Once you've pinned those key points into place, you can pin on the other parts of the curve just to keep it from shifting. Here, making sure you just pull it taut so you don't end up with the center of your facing being slightly off from the center of your skirt. Pulling it taut will give you a good indication where it's meant to sit. Pinning it into place. After you've pinned it, you can sew along. Now, if your machine can have a removable part here to make it a free arm, you can pull this out. In your machine, you might just pull something forward towards you to remove it. That makes it a little bit easier, sewing in a circle or in an almost circle. Place your fabric under the ear presser foot again with the seam allowance. So for my skirt, my waist seam is 1 centimeter, but most likely your seam allowance would be consistent with your side seams. Again, you want to backstitch beginning and end, and sew along, keeping the raw edge lined up with your seam allowance guideline. If you find sewing curves a little bit hard, just sew little bits of the curves at a time. So sew a few centimeters and then just readjust. So in your mind, it is really just a succession of small lines, small straight lines.